Go ahead. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Show and Tell brought to you by the Igloo and Illuna Linked Open Data Special Interest Working Group and the Igloo and Illuna working groups in general. Now we can turn it over to Xiaoli.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. And I'm very feel fortunate to be invited to be here to talk to you about my experience working with OCLC pilot project. So I will have 20 minutes to describing what we have done or some of my thoughts. And then at the end, you will have opportunity to ask questions. So now let me switch to my screen so you can see the PowerPoint slides I created. Okay, why it's not working? Hold on 1 second. Okay, sorry. How do I make the screen shared? We practiced, it worked. Okay, here. Okay, I hope you can see my screen now.
Yes.
So, good, thank you. So for today's talk, I would like to concentrate on 2 parts. First one, just give you a very brief description. What is the project passage? And then some highlights of my experience with the project. And in my highlights, there's many excellent experience, but I'm going to just discuss 3 of them. One is creating entities, basically thinking about is like creating records. And the second is talking about some multilingual support provided by this project. And then the third one, we will end up with some display features I'd like to share with you. So first, what is a project passage? It is a OCLC linked data palette project, and it provides a live system that participating libraries really can use it to imagine what the future of cataloging might look like through the experience with the creating of entities like resources, people, organizations, places, events, concepts, etc. And also, most important, building the relationships among those entities. Third, which is equally important, I found is very valuable to me in my personal experience. It is a community where participating library and OCLC work and learn together. Because at the beginning of the pilot, we're all wondering what this project is about. So we're building those as we're learning together. So that's another important lesson I learned of adopting the new technology. It's not something just ready for you to do something, but you have to build together. If you want to learn more about project, there is a website providing you more information and also some past presentations as well. So now switch to the second part of my presentation, which will more focus on my experience and also more demo script of the screenshots. So to help to build the platform, OCLC has decided to use some existing technology which are open source and to test their version of what linked data might be able to do. So they decided to use the more like a wiki, it's a wiki software they're using, like MediaWiki, Wikibase, and then Sparkle, that's just to query the linked data. And then OpenRefined, that's one the most of library use for cleaning data, do reconciliation, finding the links, and so on. And then the third one, PyWikiBot, that's more for the batch processing. So now switch to my experience. First thing I want to show you is how easy or how difficult, depends on how you look at it. If you look at it from this side of angle or from that side of angle, how to create an entity using the project passage. So basically, there's 3 ways catalogers can create an entity, or entity means records in our current environment. You can manually creating it using the interface I just showed here, or you can use a little bit of semi-automatic way, which I will demonstrate later, is using the retriever. That's a tool OCLC created for this particular project to help the cataloger using existing data source from other linked open data places. Third way, the library could use API to batch loading from the existing data. That one I won't be able to show you because I personally hasn't had experience yet. So first, let me show you how you create an entity manually. So what you do is on that editor screen, you click on creating a new item. This screen will show up. So this display here, first thing you want to make sure what you're going to create is not exist in the database yet. So you can put in your search term in this box. It auto-populate anything as you typing. So you could either choose one, or you keep typing until you find something you're looking for. In my case, I'm trying to create a name entity for myself. I'm pretty sure I'm not famous, so there's nothing exists yet. So I started to create my own. Once you want to create a new item, it asks you what language do you want to use, and create a label. Label, in a way, thinking about is more like the string we're currently doing. And then you can provide a little bit description of about me, and I can also provide other forms of how my name has been written. I could do it on the screen, or I can do it next screen. If I click on create, this page will show up. So here, as you can tell, it immediately gave me a URI. This is URI unique to my name, and that's very important because in the linked data, URI is the most important things you want to remember. And then it showed my name as a label here, and the description I created showed up here. If I want to add more information, I can just keep adding the statement. I can also modify this screen, which is what I'm going to show you next. So I thought, since I have a Chinese name, I'm going to put my Chinese name up there. And also, maybe I want to do my last name first and the first name next. So I add those to it. And I add a few statements like who is my employee and my birthplace and so on. So once I've done those, OCLC also create a sort of user interface for catalog to see what the work look like in a more human readable interface. So here, as you can tell, this is called this where I'm switched to a screen is called a Passenger Explorer. It's no longer in the editor screen. I'm in the more user interface. It shows my name, and also known as, those are the other form of name I put it in. And I am a person, I was born in this place, and then I'm a librarian, and also my employer is UC Davis Library, and also importantly, as I showed before, it gives you the newly minted URI, which is very specific just to me. Okay, so this is just one example of how to create entity. You can use the same interface, create entity for organization, for a place, for a resources, for any entities, any things you can think of. So next I want to show you, instead of doing manual creation from scratch, how can you utilize existing data? So that tool was built by OCLC called the Retriever. Retriever basically go out, finding the existing resources and showed to you, and also deduping them and let you know whether it's already in the passage or not. So next screen, let me show you. So I was trying to use this Retriever tool to finding a particular museum in China, and then when I put in the museum is for a particular very famous leader in China, when I put his name in, it showed me what so far I can see. I mean, more than this. I'm just give you one screenshot. What they retrieved from a Wiki Data source, and what was retrieved from a VF. And there's another column is for fast, and which I didn't show. But so what I'm going to show you is, if I decided to using the data from a Wiki Data to create this entity, what would I see? So as soon as I click on create, lots of data which are in the Wiki Data will show on my screen. And there I can either delete them if I don't like it, or I can just accept them. So notice that it gave me the label, it gave me the Chinese characters, and in Japanese, and also tell me in which country, and give me the coordinates. And here it gives me the different URIs used in other sources. For example, it tells me Library of Congress Authority File ID, and the VF ID, and the Wiki item ID. So this is way you can create an entity using existing data from somewhere else. So next, I want to just highlight some other experience I had, which I thought that might be sort of open the window for us to see what the future of cataloging might look like, or what technology might be able to do for us. So one of the things I find is very impressive of Project Passenger is it supports multi-languages, which I already show you. I can easily put my name there and it shows everywhere in Chinese. But it also, in addition, just tell you what language it is. When I type in a Chinese character, I can even choose what written styles it is. I mean, Chinese, like probably other non-Latin language, has multiple written styles, which each character in different written style have a different Unicode value. So it is very useful to be very specific what type of written styles you're using to help the machine to know how to do the indexing. And also very importantly, if you have those very granular data, machine can do a lot of things, which I will share my thoughts with you later. So here, I'm putting in those 5 Chinese characters. I'm indicating I'm using simplified Chinese way to written it. And here it tells me those characters, and this is in the simplified Chinese written style. So in addition to able allows catalog to put into select the written styles, it also gives you a different interface which you can switch to different language very easily. So for example, that same famous person, I'm looking at the description for him. So in this screen, I'm looking at the English display as a primary label, and because here I'm choosing my display as English here, but I can easily switch to the other language. If I switch to Chinese, his name is changed to Chinese character, even though that same English name is still showing there, but it switched the way which is become more primary. So if I am a Chinese user, I maybe prefer looking at the Chinese display instead of English display. But notice this is the same description because they're using the same URI. But patron can choose, or user can choose what screen do they prefer to look at it. So this is about create an entity, and here are my 2 thoughts. I know this is my personal view, and I'm always hoping catalogers do intellectual part of the work and let the machine to do other works. So here's my thoughts. Entity for the resource in non-Latin languages. Currently, we as catalogers, we put the original scripts, and we also do transliteration. And my thinking is, in the future, and with the technology help, maybe catalog only need to put into original scripts. That machine takes care of transliteration and also save that same description in different written styles, if that considered useful to help the searching and help display. My second thoughts is about create entity for name for people's organization places. Our current practice is we use one authorized string, which makes sense when we can only do the text sort of matching. But in the future, I think the URI is more important, and the strings, or you can also call them labels, will become secondary. That's just additional information to support people view, but underneath, the things can be tied together by URI. So what I'm saying is maybe instead of just creating one single authorized strings, we just put any possible forms appears anywhere, but let machine to do the job. So my third part I want to show you is my very delightful experience with the display, which I already showed you a little bit. That display is called Explorer. But let's look at it a little bit more. So this is a display for J.K. Rowling. And I want to show you none of those information I created when I was creating this entity. But instead, if this information comes from DBpedia with her picture, and this part of information, it's just coming from the resources. When I create, I tie them to this author, regardless what name I use, but they're all tied with her URI. So when the display happens, the machine can go out and grab those works, listed her as author, and display to us. So we as a catalog do not have to put those things together. Next one I want to show you is a famous work, has a lot of transliteration. Again, on that Explorer display, It gives you description of that original work. And again, this information isn't come from a catalog, it's from the DPpedia. And as a catalog, what we did is we create a relationship, showed those works are the translation of this work, and then machine grab those together and display them under this original work. So third one I want to show you, which I'm very excited about it, as we all know, title page is very important to many of us. When we create a record, we tried so hard to describing the title and so on. So one of my thinking is, if it's that important, why can't we have the title page display next to resources, which we're describing? So here's an example. You have the title and the translation and so on, but the title page can be showed here. And the other thing I want to point it out, we do the uniform title to differentiate different titles so that you know which one is which one is not which one. So in the linked data, one way to do that type of distinguish is you can use a predicate or use something says it's different from this one. The reason for that because it's a different translator. So again, presenting the same information but probably using a different way. The other relationship you can also do is, even though the both are translation, but this one tells you this particular version of translation is influenced by another translation. So it's a lot of more work you can use to describe the relationship. Fourth one, this is my fourth example. So this is a place. When you create an entity for a place, in addition to a bunch of other things we're currently doing, you can also provide the coordinates. If you provided that information, when I display this place in Explorer, it shows on the map. So that gives you a much more visual view of what that place is instead of you spend a whole page describing what that place is. So my final thoughts. Why catalogs can only see the task? Why can't we incorporate other things so then catalog can see much more information, help them to identify the resources are the one they're looking for? So for example, as I showed the title page. And also currently, I think we spend quite a bit of time doing the description, doing the transcription. And I see in the future, maybe we could do less of that, but more thinking about finding the relationship, creating relationship, and linking the resource together, and make the machine utilize our data in a much more powerful way than they currently can do. Third one, the reason I think we are thinking about linked data is we can reuse other data. At the same time, make our data reusable to other places as well. So I think that's one of benefit. It's exciting, and also I know it's scary. Finding the trustworthy data is very important, but I think we are creating the data which is very useful to other community. So in my personal view, I do think linked data will bring exciting future for us. And let's embrace it, and let's work together, make it happen. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Xiaoli. Because we're running a little bit behind, I'm going to ask our next presenter to get ready with her slides while I'm introducing her. This is Nancy Lorimer at the Metadata Department at Stanford University, who has been a participant in with Stanford in the linked data for production projects. And we'll give a different perspective on working with linked data. Nancy, are you ready?
Yes, do I have it the right way around?
I
did share.
Almost there. We're seeing your presenter view.
Okay, just a sec. Okay. We will turn that around.
Yes.
Okay.
Looking good. Thank you.
Okay. Good morning, good morning for me, and thank you for having me at the Show and Tell. So I'm going to talk to you about a grant project I've been a part of for the last 2 years called Linked Data for Production. It is a Mellon Foundation grant for 6 research libraries: Columbia, Cornell, Harvard, the Library of Congress, Princeton, and Stanford. And Stanford leads the project. And I'm going to try and do it from a cataloger's point of view today. Now, Linked Data for Production has focused on the transition of basic technical services workflows to ones rooted in linked open data through active engagement with the semantic web. This transition is a critical one for libraries if they're going to do linked data. It involves many facets. As part of the grant, different institutions took on various sub-projects concentrating on one or more of these facets, such as workflow analysis from both the metadata and system sides, ontology development in various focus domains, such as rare materials, tools investigation, both current and forthcoming, and metadata creation, either through conversion of marked data or natively as linked data. Now, Stanford concentrated primarily on transferring workflows into a linked data environment, analyzing a chosen sets of workflows. These workflows we know as tracer bullets, which is kind of an ugly term, so I prefer the fireworks. A term used by developers to describe a lightweight process that follows a workflow from beginning to end that will need to be enhanced for actual production work. We had 4 primary workflows, but I only mentioned 2 today that are relevant to my emphasis on catalogers. Number 1, which was vendor-supplied cataloging, marked cataloging that is sent to us along with the materials the vendor is sending us. In this case, it was Casalini Libri. And number 2, the workflow for original cataloging within our own institution. And further, I am only bringing up the vendor-supplied cataloging to remind everyone that for many institutions in North America, original cataloging is only a small part of our cataloging workflow. At Stanford, over 80% of our cataloging comes from vendors or copy from other institutions. Without a linked data workflow for copy, we cannot support original cataloging. And just a few assumptions that we made in this process. The first of these is the realization that MARC and linked data would coexist in our discovery layer, which is Blacklight based, for some time to come. The move of library data into linked data will take a long time, and we will be receiving MARC records from vendors and through copy cataloging for many years to come. Also, there are simply some aspects of our library system that will not move into linked data. Ordering, receipts, payments, at the very least, will remain in a relational database for the foreseeable future and will require at least what we have come to know as an operational record, a MARC record, however minimal, that holds everything together. Because of this, it seems the conversion of MARC data is a requirement, whether doing copy or original cataloging. We also decided that our primary ontology would be BIBFRAME. The Library of Congress developer of BIBFRAME is one of our partners, and we had already done work together on the ontology in an earlier grant. They also had some tools to support use of the ontology, which were rather rare when we started this, even though they were somewhat underdeveloped, but better than anything else available at the time. And just as a quick thing, I'm going to go through this very quickly. Some of the early work done by our catalogers was to map our current workflow in MARC. And this is the result for original cataloging. And this is here really to remind you the complexity of our workflows. The part we are most concerned with here is the part in the brighter colors, which follows the work from copy searching through description and OCLC connection, export to our own library system, local holdings, and call number additions. That whole chunk of stuff in the bottom covers various types of authority work: names, series, subjects, call numbers, genres, etc. Stanford is particularly big on doing NACO and SACO work, and we actually have 3 SACO funnel coordinators within the institution. Now, when we moving to a more simplified workflow based on the processes, this is what that kind of looks like. And then we would add the linked data aspect with using the BIBFRAME editor and joining them all together with the operational record and into the index. I won't go into this any further. It's more background of what we are looking at. So what were our catalogers hoping to get out of this project? For one thing, we were looking for richer metadata expressed through relationships rather than the database records that we are using now. We wanted our data to be part of and interact with the greater web of data, which again means getting it out of those database records, and that the data maintains its meaning outside our catalogs. We were looking for more control of our metadata world. The big thing looking at editors is that we could create our own templates, presumably, and we would have choices about how we do our metadata. We didn't want wanted our work to be less defined by software and database limitations. And then our choices based on need, not on the MARC record, and using our workflows, not workflows imposed by some outside source. Finally, also, we wanted to broaden our metadata horizons by using others' metadata to enhance ours, or at least explore that possibility one way or the other, such as Wiki Data, DBpedia, etc. And to find ourselves a true shared cataloging environment where we build on each other's work rather than copying it and building locally. But what do these cataloger dreams hinge on? First of all, they need a flexible and robust infrastructure. They have to handle a wide variety of data from multiple sources and ontologies, able to provide some reconciliation, and that conversion from MARC is a must, and perhaps back again as well. We also need a really good metadata editor. This is where metadata entry happens and where catalogers interface with the system. Needs to be flexible and extensible, mint URIs on the fly, and amenable to production level work. So we have to have good ergonomics and so forth and so on. Finally, we need guidelines on how to work together in linked data. There's been a lot of discussion about what does a delete mean in linked data. These guidelines are really tough, and the need starts right from the beginning with the creation of the profiles or templates that we use. It also really requires the larger community than LD4P was. In our case, we're looking forward to the program of cooperative cataloging in the US to be working on that in our new grant. Now, while infrastructure is key, the primary entry point for catalogers into linked data is the editor template or profile, as the Library of Congress calls it. And this necessarily influences their outlook on native linked data cataloging and linked data in general. Our mandate in our first grant was to experiment with available editors. And by the time we were wanting to seriously test editors for the second grant, we were down to 2 possibilities, others having been eliminated, at least temporarily, because of technical or other issues. These 2 editors were tested by catalogers and other metadata librarians at the partner institution for use in the second LD4P grant, which began on July 19th. In July. The first and one that is most familiar to you is the Library of Congress BIBFRAME editor, developed at the Library of Congress specifically to test BIBFRAME. The second is called CEDAR, standing for the Center for Expanded Data Annotation and Retrieval, a project developed in the Stanford Bioinformatics Lab and funded by the National Institutes for Health. This editor was developed primarily for biomedical ontologies hosted by BioPortal, a large portal for bioinformatics data. And it was there to improve the quality of metadata by structuring the linked data through use of templates. We worked with CEDAR to add in library ontologies and vocabularies to BioPortal and to push the envelope on their development work to include the intricacies of library data, which rather astounded them at first. So let's take a look at these editors. I will not do a live demo because I need to go into the VPN network to do this, and it's pretty tricky. So let's take it. Here's the LC editor. If you notice along the edge, we have the profiles, the various profiles the Library of Congress has developed: monograph, notated music, serial, etc. And you can start with an instance or a work. In BIBFRAME, you can catalog the instance first or the work first, whichever way you want to go. And and here I'm going to be showing you an instance. Actually, this is a work. I'm sorry. No, it's an instance. Yes, it is an instance. Now, notice that all the labels down the side are RDA, and the ones in blue actually link directly to the RDA toolkit. The white boxes there are free text or sometimes pull-down menus, and the gray boxes take you into fields within those fields. So this is when you hit the instance title, you get a little box in which you fill out all the stuff for the instance title. Notice you do have to click a little bit here and there. The LC editor also has pull-down menus. This is for the Library of Congress name authority file, and various other vocabularies are in there. At the moment, only vocabularies from id.loc.gov are available, but they will be expanding this in the near future. Our second editor, Cedar, has a slightly different look to it, as you can see there. This is an RDA template that I developed in Cedar myself. It's expandable, and you expand out, and again, rather like the LC one, except in a slightly different fashion. You can expand out, and then that's where you enter your data. This expanding and contracting, this is something catalogers thought they wanted at the beginning, but they actually found it both useful and annoying. It was hard to check all your work all the time. Notice that little green check mark at the end of the field. Once you start adding data, it will turn red if your data is invalid in some way. Invalid meaning that a string must be a string, and so forth, not whether something like an ISBN is valid or invalid. It's whether it's semantically valid. Cedar also has pull-down menus for various vocabularies, though not quite as many as the LC one at the moment. And you can look at it in a couple of different ways. The other nice thing is even better, it can have pull-down choices for subclasses. Not just vocabularies. Here I've included, I don't have to include the several types of instances or even identifier types the cataloger can choose. And this makes a template much more flexible. Otherwise, you would have to put in a field for every single type of identifier or instance type you might be encountering. So testing. When we did testing, we wanted to look at everything. We started with simple monographs so we could easily compare the two editors. And in fact, everyone cataloged one in the same book, which ironically we chose the card catalog. Otherwise, they cataloged whatever came onto their desk within the parameters of the test. The other thing we did is we did experiment with profile and template creation in both things, in both editors. So let's talk a little about the potentials and pitfalls of templates, or profiles, as the Library of Congress calls them. Independent template creation. This is one of the dreams of catalogers, that they could create their own templates and put things in the order they want and have what they want. And this is true in both these cases. The profiles and templates do not need to be created by developers. They can be created by skilled metadata cataloging librarians. And this everybody found a very exciting idea. Now, in reality, it's a little more difficult. Here is an example from a profile for a sound recording in the LC editor. You notice it has a lot of things to fill out, and when I open it up for title information, you see you have to enter the property URIs yourself. You have to put in the types, the repeatability, and you notice down at the bottom it has templates. These are templates that this property goes to that template. So there's a lot of nesting involved, and it is actually fairly complicated to do. The thing to remember with these templates is it's not like creating a record in a database where you just put labels. You are actually creating the triples when you are setting up these templates. So it can be quite difficult. And I had a group of catalogers who worked on learning to do this, and it was a very large learning curve at the beginning. They finally did get quite good at it, though, so it is possible. This is what the Cedar template looks like. It is, you notice again, it has that nesting. And in this case, you have to have that nesting correct, or you have to start all over again. It can be, again, quite difficult, but it does work in the end. A nice thing about Cedar, that I didn't mention with the LC one, those URIs at the moment, you have to hand type in yourself. In Cedar, you can actually look up in BioPortal. You hit that property button, and you can actually, it pulls up various properties that are related to that are available in BioPortal. And then you pick, and it automatically puts it into your template, which is quite nice. That is one thing I really liked about Cedar, but it's, as you see here, we has dramatic role. This comes from the Perform Music Ontology, but below is BIBFRAME as well. So another thing we were talking about related to these templates is individualized views. Now, the thing about using our templates is one can have these individualized views for cataloging staff in different formats, for special projects, particularly with students, and non-specialist data entry. And you can also mandate required or optional data and validate it and restrict to certain types of data. Of course, you also provide pre-selected controlled vocabularies and can cover up the framework of linked data. There's no actual, if you looked at those bits of templates I showed you, none of them referred to BIBFRAME at all. And you can adapt the framework also, hopefully, for differing cultural ethnic models while still staying compatible with the whole. So here's a mild example in Cedar. We can compare these two templates. The one on the left is the RDA template, or a portion of the RDA template. And the one on the right is a template provided for students and faculty at Stanford to deposit their work into the institutional repository. Both of these templates are built primarily from the BIBFRAME ontology and are compatible in the data which indexes for faceting in our discoveryware, but look and act very differently to the user. But, oops, sorry, something, I lost my, okay, that cursor ran away on me. There we go. But just as a thing, the ontology structure is still a little too apparent with multiple layers to go through to add the data, and sometimes a little clunky, and a few ergonomic issues because there's a lot of clicking. And also, catalogers were a little annoyed that they had to fill in similar data multiple times, such as work and instance titles, which were often the same. And sometimes some repeating fields didn't always work as specific. Okay, here's an example of this nesting issue. This is a primary contribution one, which is at the top. One click allows you to pick the type of agent. This is in the LC editor. And a second click then takes you to the data fields about the person which you picked. And then a little more typing gets you to the pull-down menu. And also note to save that you have to hit all those plus signs, and then you also have to hit a save button at the bottom. So there is a lot of clicking involved in this. Another great thing about the templates, of course, is the lookup lists. These provide an easy, and Cedar also allows you to look up subclasses as well. These are great controlled vocabularies at your fingertips, what catalogers dream of. And you see type ahead suggestions as well. There are some drawbacks. The one thing at the end, There are drawbacks to this, obviously. There's no cross-references, no context, and all or nothing vocabularies, and not all the vocabularies were available for these tests. So at the end of our testing, we needed to pick an editor that would be used for LD4P2, our continuation grant that I will describe in a minute. In the end, we picked the LC editor. While both editors had their strengths and weaknesses, the LC editor had the benefit of already being ensconced in the library ecosystem with mature profiles to work from and people who know how to develop them further as necessary. Cedar has great features, but it will need a little bit more development work with our multi-structured data. And so far, there's only a couple of us who can create profiles. I wasn't looking forward to the idea of creating profiles myself for all of the program for cooperative cataloging. Also, many of our testers had used the LC editor before, and of course, familiarity brings more easy use. Finally, it appeared that the LC editor was easier to fit into the cloud environment we are currently developing. We are going to be adding some improvements, additions to the LC editor, contextual lookups, so that you will be able to see those lookups in context, some further vocabulary and data support, typing of fields, and more validation, and a slightly better control of URIs. So just some cataloging questions and challenges that came up. First of all, viewing in the editors. As you can see, the viewing's not really that great here. This is an edited record. You can't go back and go into editing. You have to go into editing to see everything you're going to do. The other way to look at it is actually as linked data here in Turtle, in JSON, or in RDF, but catalogers weren't very fond of that idea either. Cedar is similar. It's easier to read a little easier to read, except when there's multiple, when a field has multiple entries, you can only see the first. And again, otherwise, you see it in JSON or in N triples. There was also an interesting question about what we are really wanting to catalog. I had a person come to me wondering how to enter square brackets and a question mark around the place of publication, because we had done this as a controlled vocabulary. So this kind of thing can come up again and again. We're required to put square brackets, but it's also nice to have something as a controlled vocabulary. And how do we do both of those things? I have also put here, say that the publisher as transcribed would be the Hudson's Bay Fur Company, but the controlled entry is the Hudson's Bay Company. And dates, do we write out dates or do we do them in EDTF? Now, the idea of transcription is very important, say, for rare materials, less so for modern materials, though one of my staff tells me that it's very important for corporate bodies to have the publisher transcribed so that they can do authority work. So trying to balance these things while not making everybody do double duty is an interesting question. The other question we've always had is about, what about RDA? And the questions we have with RDA basically is, are we doing BIBFRAME or RDA or BIBFRAME plus RDA? So far, as you notice, we've been doing RDA over BIBFRAME along with BIBFRAME. But really, we've only been using the BIBFRAME content standard. We have not been using the RDA registry. Of course, some of the issues, we all know that BIBFRAME needs more properties to make it complete to do relationships between works and instances and different works. And RDA is the most obvious source of this. Current BIBFRAME profiles and templates tend to be RDA-based, but again, as I said, on the content standard. But the new LRM-based RDA is much more linked data ready. Now, there are modeling differences of it with BIBFRAME, and it is complete with itself. So the question is, what are we going to be doing about this in the future? And finally, will our workflows change? In our initial grant, we followed current workflows fairly closely, and we want to know if this will change with large-scale implementation. And again, where will we be creating authorities or something similar? Perhaps we'll be doing it in OCLC, which I didn't mention here, in Project Passage, or in various other areas as well. Finally, just a little bit beyond BIBFRAME. I'm a little over, so I need to go quick. Beyond BIBFRAME, what more do we need? Obviously, we added a whole bunch of vocabularies, and there is all the RDA reference value of vocabularies. There's a lot we can add just in library-centric vocabularies. The ones on the left are already in the LC editor. Beyond BIBFRAME, we're looking at Wiki Data and DBpedia, the union list of artist names, art and architecture thesaurus, Wiki Data, music, DBpedia, and many others. Just as a thing, also, we have been using other ontologies already within BIBFRAME, particularly MADS RDF. And the last grant also did several extensions from BIBFRAME for annotations, art and rare materials, cartographic materials, and performed music. So our next grant that we are just moved into, its primary focus is to establish a cloud-based environment for the creation of linked data according to the Program for Cooperative Cataloging Guidelines. And it would be primarily for PCC members and a cohort to create and edit data using the BIBFRAME editor and basically do original and copy cataloging within this cloud-based area. We are also working on it to enhance discovery with linked data in Blacklight. So how did our cataloger dreams go? Did we get richer metadata? Yeah. We have a little more control of our metadata world with templates, so it's a little complicated. And we have certainly been broadening our metadata horizons. Now for the other 2 to 3, the interaction, this is what we are going to be working on in the next grant. And hopefully cataloger dreams might come true here. So thank you.
Thanks a lot, Nancy. That was a great presentation. I think I'm going to try to share my screen now. I have the questions up. If I can get that. This looks like it might be it. Yes. Okay. So we put a link in the chat on YouTube where you can enter your questions. You can enter them on YouTube, but only people who have Google recognizes with the login apparently can use that chat to make questions. So we prefer it if you go to this form. And we only have a few minutes left, but those are great presentations. I'm going to raise some of the questions. Here's one from Karen Gorst-Benko. And I'm not sure which one of your presentations she was looking at, but she says, where does the influence by information come from? That might have been yours, Xiaoli, because you were drawing information from different sources in creating some of the entities. But can you speak to that? Yes?
Yes, I think it must be one of the second to last slides. And that's the relationship catalog put it in. So in that particular record, you indicate this work is influenced by that work.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I suppose that there's a way to do that in current MARC cataloging, but it sounds like it would be much better to actually establish that kind of relationship where you have URIs for both of the works and definitely identifying them.
Right. I think in current MARC environment, I don't believe you can have a particular field or a particular sense indicate, but you can definitely put into the note field.
The note, yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay. Let's see, what happened to my screen? To find it again, slides Q&A. And I think the other one was for for you also, Xiaoli, if you use Retriever to check for presence of other records and find a number of them, which one should you choose?
That's a great question, and I think the one thing you would do is you probably would choose the one you feel follows the best practice of the community you belong to.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say you would choose the one with most of data and most accurate data. So if you find a multiple, just like we currently finding the multiple BIB records, you choose the one based on certain criteria, either
Right.
your library create or your community created.
Okay. So I have a question for Nancy, and we're coming up on the end of the hour. We may stay a little bit longer if YouTube will let us, because these are these presentations have raised some interesting questions. So you mentioned about RDA, and you know, it really is an issue at this particular juncture. What direction libraries are going to go into. Do you have a sense that there's a way to come up with an approach that utilizes all the RDA concepts? And I'm thinking especially about expression, which isn't explicitly mappable to the BIBFRAME entities of work and instance. How, did your project grapple with expression at all, or I think it's important?
The project on the larger end of things, perhaps less so, but I was also leading a group that was working on the Perform Music Ontology, which was extending BIBFRAME for Perform Music. And as many of you know, music is very heavily expression-based, having every performance, of course, new performance is a new expression. So we actually reintroduced the expression level into the Perform Music Ontology. And the Library of Congress is actually using it for its music data, at least anyways, as well, just because that gathering relationship is just so important to music cataloging. So it is possible to bring the expression back into BIBFRAME. There is actually a property of has expression. And yes, we are using it in various instances.
Is that a property of work or of instance?
I think it's a property of a work. I'm not sure it's restricted actually to work, but yes.
Okay, well that would be that's very interesting, and the concept of all of the extension work that you've mentioned. So
yeah,
for
really fast, but
for a vendor that's considering, how they're going to support linked data, how extensible does their configuration and setup need to be? Because it seems to me that that there's still a lot of ferment and work going on towards sort of envisioning what linked data needs to be for libraries. It's not quite cooked yet. Would you agree with me? You have a sense for when it's going to be cooked, or if it's ever going to be cooked? Are we all going to finally come together on some model? Or does the possibility of linked data make it so that libraries may want and need to expand in different directions?
Well, I'll start out by reminding you that RDA is not fully cooked. we've been using it for years. I would say the answer is both. I would hope that at least here in the U.S., in the work we'll be doing in the next grant with the Program for Cooperative Cataloging, that we will at least have some kind of basic equivalent to the bibliographic standard record stuff, that what is required to be a member of PCC, what data you offer, perhaps. But on the other hand, we want to be able to link out to other places, and people will be making different choices in that matter, depending on their institution. And we do, I think we all do want to keep the flexibility that's inherent in linked data, because that's really one of its big, we don't want to turn linked data into MARC somehow over again.
Wow, great, great. I concur with that. Personally, my personal view, but this is something that I think that the tools that are going to get built and the capabilities need to have a lot of flexibility.
Yes, and it will not be easy for vendors, I'm sure. So,
okay. Thank you both very much for agreeing to do this. This has been one of the most interesting, to me, show and tells that we've had. Not so much from a developer point of view, but from a work and workflow and envisioning the future point of view. So I thank you very much.
There are still a couple of questions.
We have questions. Oh, we've got some more questions coming in. If people can stay, I would like to ask them. Will slides be available? Yes, please. As soon as you can send them to me, Xiaoli and Nancy, I can put them up on a Google Space and post links to them in, and also send them out to our mailing list. Does the Question Authorities app from Cornell simplify the task of getting more information about an authorized term on a drop-down list in the BIBFRAME editor? Does the editor offer more detailed information about list entries?
The Question Authorities app will, in the near future, be able to give you context information about an authorized term around it. So you will be able to see, scope notes and that kind of thing with it.
Okay.
So the answer, yes, Stephen.
Okay. Yes, this was Stephen Hearn. And for the record, with London in brackets, question mark, would it make sense to record that with the authorized form, but have some indicator that it is questionable or not from the resource? Excuse me.
Yes. Again, yes, that would be very sensible. And we have discussed this. We would just have to, we would have to find some property for it, which we don't have just at the moment.
Right, right. The questionability property.
But yes, that is a very sensible thing to say, to
right.
suggest.
Rather than to continue the old style of using punctuation.
Right. But that still doesn't solve the problem of when you actually want to transcribe something and have the
right. Okay.
The control term.
See if any more have shown up. It looks like we've gotten all of the questions. Oh, new top questions. Sorry. I think that was I think we answered it. That was the Stephen Hearn question. And so thank you, everyone who asked questions, and thank you, everyone who attended. Wow, we've got 160 people watching. And I'm sure there are many more that will be interested. The video of this will be available on YouTube shortly after we conclude today, which we're just about to do. One more thing I would like to share is this and end with, and that is this linked open data information slide. Okay. I'm not sure quite how to get that up. Mehmet, can you? Google Hangouts is sharing the window with Hangouts. Okay. Okay, I'm going to try to share it. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to end with this information. There's my email address and Xiaoli's email address. If you have any questions about this presentation, and some information about the linked open data special interest group for Igloo and Luna, and a mailing list, and the question and answer board. And that should be enough to give you a road in if you want to follow up on anything with us. Okay. So, Mehmet. Oh, and a thank you to our engineer and general all-around great guy, Mehmet Çelik, who has helped us with this presentation.
And just one side note, Eddie asks a question on the YouTube channel because he's unable to ask it anywhere else. The slides will be on the Igloo website also.
Ah, okay. Okay, yes, we can put a link to them there too. So, yes, please, Xiaoli and Nancy, if you could email the slides to me or point me to them, I will make sure that they get distributed. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you all. Are we done, Mehmet?
You're done if you say we're done.
Okay. This was fun. Thank you, everyone. And we can wrap now.
Bye-bye.